If you close your eyes and picture the American dream, the image is almost always the same. It is not a pile of cash. It is not a fancy car. It is a house. It is a modest home with a yard, a white picket fence, and a deed with your name on it. This image is the bedrock of Western society. It represents stability. It represents sovereignty. It represents the ability to plant roots, build a community, and pass wealth down to your children. For the last 70 years, we were told that if you worked hard, saved your money, and played by the rules, this dream was your birthright. But today, that dream is dying. For millions of young people, it is already dead. We are watching the systematic dismantling of the property-owning middle class. We are witnessing the greatest transfer of physical assets in human history, moving from the hands of individuals into the hands of faceless corporations and sovereign wealth funds. You feel it when you look at Zillow and see houses that cost $300,000 just 4 years ago now listing for $600,000. You feel it when you see entire neighborhoods bought up by LLCs that you have never heard of. You feel it when your rent goes up by 20% in a single year, while your paycheck stays exactly the same. We are told this is just supply and demand. We are told it is because we didn't build enough houses. We are told it is because millennials buy too much avocado toast. But these are lies designed to distract you from the structural reality. The truth is far darker. The truth is that the housing market has been financialized, weaponized, and cornered by a new class of feudal lords who have realized a terrifying economic truth. A nation of renters is far more profitable than a nation of owners. We are returning to a historical norm that we thought we had escaped. We are returning to feudalism. Today, we are going to expose the mechanics of this takeover. We are going to trace the history of housing from the Middle Ages to the invention of the 30-year mortgage to the catastrophic turning point of 2008. We are going to explain why Wall Street wants to be your landlord and why, if current trends continue, you will own nothing, you will rent everything, and you will never be free. To understand where we are going, we have to understand where we came from. We have to realize that the middle-class homeowner is a historical anomaly. It is a freak accident of the 20th century. For 99% of human history, almost nobody owned their home. In the Middle Ages, under feudalism, the king owned everything. He granted land to his lords, and the lords allowed the peasants, the serfs, to live on the land in exchange for labor and a share of the crops. The serf owned nothing. He had no rights to the soil he tilled. He lived at the mercy of the lord. If the lord wanted him gone, he was gone. His children inherited his poverty, not his assets. This system didn't really change for 1,000 years. Even in the 19th century, during the Industrial Revolution, the vast majority of people were renters. In cities like London and New York, workers lived in squalid tenements owned by slumlords and industrial tycoons. They paid weekly rents that kept them perpetually poor. The idea that a factory worker could own a piece of the earth was laughable. So, what changed? How did we get the American dream? It was an invention. Specifically, it was the result of two massive government interventions following the Great Depression and World War II. First, the government invented the modern mortgage. Before the 1930s, if you wanted to buy a house, you typically needed 50% cash down, and the loan term was only 5 years. It was a rich man's game. But the government created the Federal Housing Administration and the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. Suddenly, you only needed 10% down. You could pay for your house over your entire working life. Second, the GI Bill. After World War II, millions of returning soldiers were given subsidized loans to buy homes in the newly built suburbs. This created the Ownership Society. For the first time in history, the working class could build equity. A mortgage payment was a forced savings account. Every month, you bought a little more of your freedom. By the time you retired, you owned the asset free and clear. You had no housing cost. You had a nest egg to sell or pass to your children. This was the engine of the middle class. It redistributed wealth from the capital class to the labor class. It created a society of stakeholders who cared about their neighborhoods because they owned a piece of them. But the capital class never stopped watching. They never stopped calculating. And eventually they figured out how to take it back. The turning point was the great financial crisis of 2008. This is the moment the trap was sprung. We all know the story of the subprime mortgage bubble. Banks lent money to people who couldn't afford it, packaged those loans into fraudulent securities, and sold them to the world. When the bubble burst, millions of Americans lost their homes to foreclosure. It was a tragedy for the families. But for Wall Street, it was the sale of the century. While Main Street was bleeding, a new type of predator entered the water: private equity. Firms like Blackstone, not to be confused with BlackRock, though they play the same game, saw an opportunity that had never existed before. In the past, Wall Street didn't buy houses. Houses were messy. You had to fix toilets, mow lawns, and deal with tenants. It wasn't scalable. It was a mom-and-pop business. But in 2010, technology changed the game. Smart algorithms, cloud computing, and mobile management apps meant that a hedge fund in New York could manage 10,000 rental homes in Atlanta, Phoenix, and Charlotte without ever stepping foot in them. So they went on a shopping spree. Between 2011 and 2017, institutional investors bought over 200,000 single-family homes. They bought them at foreclosure auctions on the courthouse steps, paying cash, pennies on the dollar. They bought the homes that the middle class had lost. But they didn't buy them to flip them. They didn't buy them to sell them back to families. They bought them to rent them. They created a brand new asset class called single-family rental securitization. They bundled the rent checks from thousands of American families into bonds and sold them to investors. Think about the perversity of this. Your pension fund might be investing in a company that is outbidding your children for a home, forcing them to rent so that the rental income can pay for your pension. We are cannibalizing our own future. This was the birth of the corporate landlord. And they have only gotten hungrier. Today, in some starter home neighborhoods in Atlanta or Phoenix, institutional investors are buying 30, 40, or even 50% of all homes for sale. They are not playing by the same rules as you. When you try to buy a house, you have to get a mortgage approval. You have to get an inspection. You have to negotiate. The corporate landlord comes in with an all-cash offer. They waive the inspection. They close in 3 days. They pay 10% over the asking price because they don't care about the price of the house. They care about the yield. They care about the rent they can extract from you forever. You cannot compete with a printing press. You cannot compete with a sovereign wealth fund. You are bringing a knife to a nuclear war. But why are prices staying so high? Why doesn't the market correct? This brings us to the second pillar of the death of homeownership, the supply stranglehold. Economics 101 says that if prices go up, builders should build more houses and prices should come down. But that mechanism is broken. First, we stopped building starter homes. In the 1940s and 50s, builders constructed millions of small 1,200 square foot homes, the famous Levittown houses. They were simple, affordable, and functional. Today, those houses are illegal to build in most of America. Zoning laws, building codes, and not in my backyard regulations have made it impossible to build small. Minimum lot sizes, mandatory parking requirements, and environmental reviews mean that a builder cannot make a profit on a small, affordable house. They are forced to build massive, luxury McMansions to cover the cost of the land and the permits. We have legislated the starter home out of existence. And then there is the cost of money. For 15 years, from 2008 to 2022, the Federal Reserve kept interest rates at zero. This flooded the world with cheap money. When money is free, asset prices inflate. The rich borrowed this free money to buy up real estate, driving prices to the moon. Now that interest rates have risen to 5 or 7%, you are hit with a double whammy. The prices haven't crashed because there is no supply, but the cost of the mortgage has doubled. To buy the median home in America today requires an income of over $100,000. The median household income is only $75,000. The math is fundamentally broken. The ladder has been pulled up, but it gets worse. We are seeing a shift not just in who owns the homes, but in what the homes are for. Enter the build-to-rent phenomenon. For decades, developers built subdivisions to sell to families. Today, entire neighborhoods are being built specifically for hedge funds. You drive past a new development, you see brand new houses, and you think, great, more supply. But then you see the sign, leasing now. These houses will never be for sale. They are built directly onto the balance sheet of a corporation. They are born as rentals. This creates a permanent inventory shortage for buyers. It ensures that the serf class has no option but to rent. And let's talk about the final nail in the coffin, Airbnb and the financialization of shelter. In the old world, a house was a place to live. In the new world, a house is a hotel. Investors realized they could make 3 times more money renting a house by the night to tourists than renting it by the month to a local family. So, they bought up the housing stock in desirable cities, turned them into short-term rentals, and hollowed out the community. This removes housing supply from the market, driving up prices for everyone else. It turns neighborhoods into transient hotel districts where no one knows their neighbors. So, what is the end game? Where does this lead? We are heading toward a society that looks very much like 19th century England, a rentership society. In this future, you will live in a house owned by BlackRock. You will drive a car subscribed from Ford. You will sleep on a mattress subscribed from Casper. The corporation will take care of the maintenance. They will mow the lawn. They will fix the roof. It will be convenient. But the price of that convenience is your sovereignty. When you rent, you have no stability. The landlord can raise the rent every year, capturing every raise you get at work. You cannot paint the walls. You cannot renovate. You are a guest in your own life. But the biggest loss is financial. Homeownership was the primary way the middle class built wealth. It was a forced savings account that grew tax-free. If you rent for 40 years, you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to a landlord and end up with zero. If you own for 40 years, you end up with an asset worth hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. By destroying homeownership, the system destroys the ability of the working class to accumulate capital. It ensures that wealth concentrates at the top, while the bottom 90% live paycheck to paycheck, skimming along the surface of survival. This is feudalism 2.0. The lords provide the housing, the serfs provide the cash flow. The psychological impact of this is devastating. A society of renters is a society of transients. If you don't own your home, you don't invest in your community. You don't fight for better schools because you might move next year. You don't plant a tree that takes 20 years to grow because you won't be there to see it. Ownership creates citizens. Renting creates consumers. So, is it hopeless? Is the American dream dead and buried? Not entirely. But the strategy has to change. The old advice of save 10% and wait does not work when house prices rise faster than you can save. We are seeing a return to multi-generational living. This was the norm for thousands of years, and it is coming back out of necessity. Families are pooling resources to buy one large home instead of 3 small ones. We are seeing people move to the Rust Belt and the Midwest, places left behind by the global economy where houses are still affordable, abandoning the coastal cities that have become playgrounds for the rich. We are seeing a rise in unconventional ownership, tiny homes, land co-ops, and building your own shelter. But the most important step is to refuse to accept the narrative that you will own nothing and be happy. Ownership is a responsibility, yes, it is hard work, but it is the only path to freedom. Do not let them convince you that renting is better because it is flexible. Flexibility is just another word for instability. The gate to the castle is closing. The drawbridge is being raised. The era of easy homeownership is gone, and it is likely not coming back in our lifetimes. But history shows us that there are always pockets of opportunity for those who are willing to look where others won't, for those who are willing to sacrifice comfort for sovereignty. The choice is stark. You can accept the new feudalism, pay your subscription fees, and live in the pod, or you can fight for your piece of the earth. The dream isn't free anymore. In fact, it has never been more expensive, but the cost of not owning it is your freedom. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.